I am 89 years old, and for 6 minutes my heart stopped completely inside a hospital room in Knoxville, Tennessee. 6 minutes. The doctors told me that afterward their voice is careful and measured, the way doctors speak when the mathematics of what happened does not fully reconcile with the living man sitting up in front of them. 6 minutes where I was not in this world. And in those 6 minutes, I saw things, and I heard things, and I was given something to carry back that I have not stopped trying to put into words ever since. I am not a preacher. I am not a theologian. I am a retired school teacher from East Tennessee who has spent the last 20 years of his life missing his wife with an ache that never quite learned how to heal. But I was sent back for a reason, and that reason was you. So I am asking you, before you do anything else right now, to stay with me. Listen to every word, because what my wife was permitted to say to me in that place was not only for me. It was for everyone who has ever stood at a graveside and wondered whether love survives the grave. It was for you. And if something in your spirit is telling you right now that you need to hear this, then trust that. Stay. Listen. And when this reaches something true inside you, share it with someone who is still carrying a grief they cannot put down. We are all walking each other home. My name is Walter. I was born in 1936 in a small clapboard house outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, the second of 5 children. My father worked the Southern Railway line and came home in the evenings smelling of coal and machine oil and the particular exhaustion of men who spend their lives moving heavy things across long distances. My mother kept a kitchen garden behind the house that gave us tomatoes and pole beans and summer squash through the hot months. And the smell of that garden on a July afternoon, rich and green and warm, is still, after 89 years, one of the most comforting things I know. We grew up slowly in the way of that era. Front porches and hand-me-down Sunday clothes and church twice a week without debate. I was a faithful boy, not because I had thought my way to belief, but because God seemed as obvious to me as the mountains were obvious, just simply there, holding up the sky at the edges of everything I knew. I went to school and then to college on the GI Bill, and I came home to Tennessee, and I became a 5th grade teacher at a school in Knox County. I taught there for 31 years. I loved teaching with a devotion that sometimes surprised me. Those 10-year-old faces, still so open to the world, the whole story of their lives still mostly unwritten. I like to believe that something I planted in them took root and grew after they left my classroom. But the truest and most central thing in my life, the fixed star around which everything else turned, was Margaret. I met Margaret at a church social in the fall of 1958. She was 20 years old. She had dark hair cut just below her ears and brown eyes that seemed to hold the whole of the autumn afternoon inside them. She laughed easily, and when she laughed, she did not do it carefully, the way some people manage the impression their happiness makes on others. She threw her head back and laughed from somewhere deep, I fell in love with that laugh before I knew her name. We were married in June of 1959 in a small Baptist church, 32 people in the pews, and I cried when she came down the aisle. My groomsmen elbowed me, and I did not care one bit. I was 22 years old, and the woman I wanted to spend my life with was walking toward me through candlelight, and I was not ashamed of the tears. We had 52 years together, 52 years of ordinary mornings, coffee and toast, and the newspaper spread on the kitchen table, of raising 3 children in a house on a quiet street where the maple in the front yard turned a deep orange every October. 52 years of Sunday mornings in the same church pew, of driving through the Smoky Mountains in autumn with the car windows down, of sitting on the back porch long after the children were grown and gone, just the two of us, talking about nothing important, the way people talk when they are very comfortable with each other. I did not know in those years how to be grateful enough for ordinary. Nobody teaches you that. Nobody sits you down and says, be present in this Tuesday morning, in this particular quality of autumn light coming through the kitchen window, in the specific weight of this hand in yours, because the day is coming when you would give anything to be back inside it. Margaret died on a Thursday morning in October. She was 69 years old. She had gone outside to hang laundry on the clothesline in the backyard, and she simply fell, a massive stroke. She was gone before the ambulance reached the house. I remember the neighbor who came running when she heard the commotion. I remember the sound of the ambulance radio, a flat and indifferent sound. I remember sitting on the back porch steps after they had taken her body, looking at the laundry still on the clothesline, the sheets moving gently in the October breeze. I sat there for a very long time. I did not yet understand how to hold the fact that the 52 years had just ended. For 20 years after that October morning, I lived inside a grief that never fully resolved. It changed its shape over the years. The first year was the sharpest, the most violent kind of loss. The second year was different, quieter, more bewildering, because the world expected me to be further along than I was. But the grief never left. It became the texture of living. I would reach across the table for something and find her absence instead. I would pour 2 cups of coffee by habit and then stand there looking at the second cup. I kept her side of the closet unchanged for 4 years. My daughter helped me finally clear it, gently and lovingly, and I let her. And I felt like a man who had just signed something he did not fully understand. I prayed through all of it. I want you to know that. I was not a man who turned away from God in grief. I prayed every morning and every evening. I read my Bible. I sat in that same church pew every Sunday. I believed that Margaret was with God and that God was good. I believed it the way I had always believed it, with the steady, faithful certainty of a man from East Tennessee who had never had much cause to doubt. But belief, I learned over those 20 years, is not the same as knowing. And there was a quiet question that lived inside me, persistent the way a low ache in the bones persists. Not dramatic, not loud, just always there. I believed she was with God. but I wondered whether the particular love between a man and a woman, the specific, earned love of 52 years of mornings together, whether that particular thing survived, whether the Margaret I would find, if I found her, would still be my Margaret, the one who laughed with her head back and had opinions about everything and smelled of gardenia in the summertime. That was the question that 20 years of faith had not fully answered. Not death, not judgment, just that one quiet, aching question. I was 89 years old this past January when my heart began to give out. I had known for a year that things were changing in ways that could not be reversed. The doctors in Knoxville spoke carefully about the weakness in the heart muscle, about fluid, about options. I listened to them, and I was not afraid. I was tired in my bones the way very old men get tired. Not despair, just a deep, settled weariness. The particular exhaustion of having been in a place a long time. My daughter Ruth drove me to the hospital on a cold Wednesday morning. She talked the whole way there, filling the silence, the way she always did when she was frightened. I held her hand and told her I was fine. I believed it when I said it. The hospital room was white and very quiet. There was a window, and through it, the January sky was that flat, pale gray that settles over the Tennessee hills in deep winter. Not dramatic, just relentless and cold. They connected me to machines that beeped softly, keeping time like a very slow clock. Ruth had brought a framed photograph from the house and set it on the bedside table without saying anything about it, as if it were simply something that belonged there. It was Margaret and me on our 40th anniversary, standing in the garden. She was laughing at something I had just said, her head tipped back, her hair silver and beautiful in the afternoon light. I had looked at that photograph 10,000 times in 20 years. I looked at it again in that hospital room, and I thought, quietly and without drama, Margaret, I am nearly there. I am almost at the place where the distance between us finally closes. That thought settled over me gently, the way the first warmth of spring settles over cold ground. And then the machines changed their sound, and the room filled with people moving quickly and purposefully. And there was a tremendous compression in my chest, like a wave pressing through from the inside. And then there was silence. The pain left first. That is the first thing I want you to hold. The very moment my heart stopped, the pain that had lived in my chest for months simply vanished. Not diminished, gone entirely. And I was weightless in a way that had nothing to do with floating or dreaming. It was a fundamental release, as if the part of me that had spent 89 years pulling toward the earth had been given permission to let go. I became aware that I was above the room. I could see my body on the bed below me, and I could see the nurses working with their practiced, efficient urgency. And I could see Ruth in the doorway, her hand pressed flat over her mouth, her shoulders shaking with something she was trying to hold inside. And I felt, watching all of this, an extraordinary peace. Not the peace of indifference, not the peace of not caring, the peace of a certainty that went deeper than any faith I had ever worked my way to through years of Sunday mornings. Everything was going to be all right. I knew it the way I knew my own name. And then there was a direction, a knowing, the way you know the direction of home when you step out the door on a completely dark night. There was light ahead of me, warm and moving, the color of late afternoon sun coming through old yellow curtains, and it breathed the way a living fire breathes. I moved toward it, or it came toward me. The distinction ceased to matter. The distance between me and that light simply stopped existing. When I entered that light, the first thing I knew with everything I was in that moment, was that I was completely and entirely known. Not observed from the outside, known from the inside. Every year of my life, every prayer I had whispered into the dark ceiling of an empty bedroom. Every morning I had stood at the kitchen counter holding a cup of coffee with no reason to hurry anywhere. Every moment of doubt, every moment of clinging to faith with both hands. Every time I had said her name out loud in an empty house just to hear it. All of it was present. All of it was visible in that light. And not one part of it brought shame. Only an acceptance so complete and so warm that the only word I have for it is grace. Absolute and unearned grace. And then there was a presence at the center of the light. I will not dress this up or make it larger than the truth of it. He was there, and he looked at me, and in that looking, I understood things that I cannot fully translate into human language, but I will try. I understood that I had never, in 89 years, been alone. Not in the dark nights after Margaret, not in the hard years of stretching a school teacher's salary across a family of 5. Not in any of it. He had been present in every moment I had lived, not watching from a distance the way we imagine God sometimes, up and away and looking down, present, close, woven into the ordinary fabric of every day. I wept from something that did not have a name yet in any language I had ever spoken. And then she was there, Margaret. She was there the way everything in that place was there, which is to say more present, more fully real, more entirely herself than I had ever experienced any person being in the physical world. She was not the Margaret of age. She was not the Margaret of illness or weariness. She was Margaret as she was always meant to be, complete and radiant and whole. And she was smiling, that smile, with her head tipped just slightly to the right, the way it always was, the way I would have known in any universe, in any form, across any distance. She came to me and she spoke, not mouth to ear, not sound through air. What she said came into me, the way light fills a room when you pull back the curtains, immediate and complete. She said, I have been here all this time. She said, the love between us did not end when my body ended. She said, God held it. He holds all of it. Every love that was ever truly real between people who belong to each other. He holds it whole and complete, and nothing is missing from it. She said, I have been with you in the mornings. I have been with you at the table. I have been with you every single time you sat on the back porch and said my name out loud when you thought no one could hear. She said, "You have to go back." She said it with the same gentle directness she always had, the directness of a woman who loved you too honestly to soften what needed to be said. She said, "Go back and tell them that the love is not interrupted. Tell them that what God joins together does not come undone at the grave. Tell them that grief is real and He does not dismiss it or rush it or minimize it, but that the grace of Christ goes deeper into human sorrow than any sorrow has ever been able to go. Tell them that the ones they are missing are more themselves right now than they ever were. Tell them they are held. Tell them. So I am telling you. The return was not gentle. I will not pretend otherwise. Coming back into a body, into weight and cold, and the sterile smell of a hospital room, after where I had been, was the hardest thing I have ever done. I heard Ruth's voice first, saying, "Papa, Papa, Papa," the way you call someone back from a long distance, and I followed the sound of her voice like a thread. I opened my eyes to the white ceiling, and I wept like a man who has been given the most extraordinary gift and sent back before he was finished receiving it. I am 89 years old. I have been to the other side of this life, and I have been sent back. And here is what I need you to hear. Whatever brought you to this moment, whatever loss you are living with, whatever question you have been asking in the dark for years, the love survives. The person survives. Margaret is more herself right now, more alive right now, more entirely who she was created to be than she was in any moment I held her hand in this world. And she is held by the same hands that are holding you. The grace of Jesus Christ is not a comfort confined to the walls of Sunday morning. It is a living, active, indestructible reality that reaches down into every grave you have ever wept at and holds what is there. Nothing that God made is lost. Not one love, not one person, not one prayer whispered in a dark room with no one apparently listening. I am going to see her again. I know that now, not as a belief I am working to maintain, but as a memory of a place I have already been. And if you have someone waiting for you on that other shore, let that knowledge hold you through whatever you are carrying today. Grieve if you must. Grieve honestly. Your grief is not a failure of faith, but let it be held by the larger truth, the truth I saw with my own eyes. The whole truth is wider and brighter and more deeply loving than anything this side of it can show us. I was sent back to tell you that. Margaret told me to tell you, and I am a man who keeps his word.